At age 12, I started babysitting for family friends who had 3 daughters, ages 4 to 7. They lived in a cul-de-sac, where nearly every home housed a young couple with children in elementary school. The neighborhood was extremely close-knit, like the 1950s American block party communities. They had a communal policy on using one another's toys. Any kid could use a play structure in someone else's yard anytime without asking. Shortly after I started working in their neighborhood, they revised the rule to, quote, anytime a family is not using a babysitter to watch their kids, to ensure I wouldn't get overwhelmed supervising a swarm of kids I wasn't paid to watch. It was thus more or less known when parents were going out and leaving someone else in charge of their children. I was welcome to take the girls to play in any other yard as they wanted. Their parents even gave me permission to let them play in someone else's yard or sandbox independently if I needed a short break. Being an avid Babysitters Club reader, I never left the girls outside unsupervised. I would wait until someone else wanted a water or bathroom break, and then corral everyone inside temporarily. Similarly, when the girls wanted to play in the treehouse owned by an older couple a few doors up the street, I would climb up, despite a slight fear of heights, and crouch in the little house with them, despite feelings of claustrophobia, to follow my own rule. I don't recall whether my own, quote, everyone inside, everyone outside together rule preceded the first odd interaction I had with the immediate next-door neighbor or not, but when the police questioned the girls I babysat years later, they said nothing bad ever happened when I watched them because I set up that weird, sometimes annoying rule. One day while playing basketball with the girls in the driveway, the next-door neighbor came outside in a baseball cap and sunglasses and sat down on his second-story deck to read a paperback. I later noticed he'd turned his chair around 180 degrees to face us in the basketball hoop. I couldn't tell if he was looking at us. He had no reaction to me staring at him, flipping pages in the book like someone would when reading. This behavior repeated every time we played basketball for the 5 years I watched the girls. Eventually, once I noticed him in the chair, accessories on, I would suggest a game we could play inside or in the front yard but out of view. The strange neighbor was familiar to me as he went to my church. I have never seen someone kneel in a pew, head bowed and hands folded, with the same level of intensity before or since. Once when my family was seated behind him, the priest came over to ask me to lead the children's mass during the homily because the usual person was out sick. This guy turned around and glared at me like it personally set out to interrupt his prayer time. When I worked in the church nursery during various masses, I would often make eye contact with him as he waited in line outside the nursery door to use the restroom. From what I gleaned from our family friends and other people in the neighborhood, the odd basketball observer was a nice guy who gave up his apartment and job in the city to move in and care for his sick elderly mother. Since everyone thought he was great, and since he went to church, this was before the Catholic sex scandal broke, I figured I was in the wrong for finding him creepy. Even as young as 12, I was used to guys in their 40s and 50s asking me to go somewhere with them, or driving by slowly as I walked/bike/jog to make lewd comments. I figured I was projecting those experiences onto this awkward, quiet guy who was not doing anything wrong. For instance, I was certain that if the guy next door was a creep, he would not miss the opportunity to watch with his sunglasses on and book in hand while the kids and I went swimming each summer when the family opened their above-ground pool. But he never set foot out on his deck when the kids and I donned swimsuits to play in the pool or backyard. I was more convinced I was conceited and mean. Then when I was 15 or 16, I caught him looking in the window as I cleaned up after movie night. The girls and I put on a film after bath time, and instead of watching it theater style in total darkness, we kept some lights on so I could braid the girls' hair. The big screen TV we used for movies was located in an addition to the house with floor-to-ceiling windows. Though my parents were OCD about shutting blinds and curtains when the sun went down to prevent people from seeing in, our family friends had no window treatments on the big modern windows. When I turned off the last light in the room, which was a floor lamp right next to a window facing the neighbor's house, I could see into the darkness outside where the weird man sat on his deck in a chair in line with the window I was looking through. I looked over my shoulder and realized he had line of sight on where the girls and I sat on the floor during the movie. As I looked back towards the house, I glimpsed him hustling inside. I would have doubted I'd seen him at all if he had not left the chair in an unusual spot. After watching him turn the chair around to read during many a basketball match, I knew where the chair sat that night, facing the window into the family room. It was not the chair's usual spot on the deck. After that incident, I would suggest playing board games in another room, or insist on watching movies theater style to ensure he could not peep on what we did at night. Once the girls were asleep, I avoided the family room entirely because I was paranoid about being watched. If I wasn't in the kitchen doing homework or reading, away from all the windows, I'd walk around the original first-floor footprint of the house, where all the windows had curtains. The first time the parents noticed my change in routine, they insisted I could watch TV or movies in the family room. I didn't mention anything to them because I was worried my concerns were silly and conceited. When I was 17, my family heard an evening cable news story about a man in our town caught in a police sting operation in which a woman pretended to prostitute her 2-year-old. When they raided his house, the police found a ton of child pornography on his computer. Our family friends called a couple weeks later. They wanted to know how I knew the young man next door to them was not safe. He was the guy I'd heard about on TV. As they described it, the police found his blog where he wrote about his obsession with one of the girls who lived next door to him. It detailed his fantasies involving her and his plans to act on them. Things like lying in the treehouse for hours hoping to corner her when she climbed up alone to play. Many of his entries focused on taking advantage of or kidnapping the girl while the babysitter was in charge. In his head, babysitters were like the ones in the old movies, talking to friends on the phone or making out with a boy they invited over instead of caring for the children. As it became clear I did neither one of those things, his plans evolved to killing the babysitter, taking the girl, and getting out of Dodge. After talking to the girls to ensure they were not victims, the police suggested I might know something to have acted the way I did. All the pieces, the frequent run-ins at the church when I had children in my care, or the weird things he did when he knew I was watching the kids next door, all fit together cohesively. I was relieved I was not mean-spirited or imagining things. I was perhaps conceited. The focus was not on me, but on the children. But I was not crazy. I recognized I was not the person most at risk in this situation. And yet, suburb pedo and would-be murderer, let's not meet again. This happened in the late 2000s when I was 12 years old. I grew up and lived in a developing nation, so many of the folks who read regularly here might not completely understand/relate to the circumstances in the incident, but I'll try my best to give any background necessary. I was never given permission by my parents to stay out after 7 p.m. for any reason. A movie that ends at 6:30 p.m. and I was dropped home by my friend's parents? No. Study at my neighbor's house past 7 p.m.? No. So I was naturally very excited when I got permission to go watch a late-night movie with all my cousins and stay the night at my grandmother's place. There were 6 of us together, 5 male and 1 female cousin. I was the youngest, the rest were all adults in their mid-20s. The movie finished at 2 a.m. and we were asked to go straight from the movie theater to home, which was nearby. I was more excited to see the city late at night than watching the new movie that was a big hit. We all went on 3 motorcycles to the theater and decided that once the movie was over, we would go to a cafe that was open 24/7 to have some ice cream. This was the only place that was still open, and it was relatively far away from my grandparents' house. I can't tell you how excited all of us were, because this was a new place that opened up in my city and was very popular. My friends used to brag about how many times they visited the place and how beautiful the view of the city lake is in the middle of the night. Once the movie was over and we went outside, except for the crowd from the theater, the roads were completely deserted. Not a soul in sight. Only the streetlights lit up the roads filled with potholes and nothing, not even the medical stores, were open. My female cousin had extremely strict parents, so she declined to come and said she had to be home because her parents were up waiting for her to get back. We all tried to convince her to come with us. There were 6 of us after all. But to no end, she was adamant that she had to be home. and we eventually decided to let her go. There were now 4 of us on 2 motorcycles, and we started riding towards the cafe. I was the pillion with my brother riding, and I noticed that one motorcycle was following us. It was easy to notice as they were the only other people on the roads. I told my brother immediately, and he said they're probably going to the same place and to ignore them. A little further, another motorcycle asked my cousin to stop and pretended to ask for directions. They stopped, thinking these guys were lost, and started giving them directions. While we were talking to the guys asking for directions, 2 more motorcycles showed up and surrounded us. There were somehow 8 of them suddenly. At this point, we realized that this was an ambush, but it was already too late. One of the guys pushed my cousin from the motorcycle onto the ground and started hitting him. The rest of us were trying to defend him. The fighting eventually stopped, and they left one of my cousins bleeding all over the place. They then started to ask us to call our female cousin and tell her to come back. By then, we realized they had been following us from the theater. At first, we tried to play dumb and pretended we had no women with us. One guy threatened to kill all of us if we didn't ask her to come meet us. The roads were abandoned, and the occasional car that went by simply passed without slowing down, as they were likely afraid of getting involved. The guys who ambushed us were clearly having fun, laughing while they punched and kicked us. With no help in sight, one of my cousins punched one of the guys and yelled, "Run," and instinctively, we all ran in different directions, abandoning our motorcycles on the street. They started chasing us, on foot at first. Eventually, they went back and got on their motorcycles to chase us through the streets. I didn't have a mobile phone with me, and I was unfamiliar with the area. I ran around randomly, looking for a hiding place. I jumped a wall into a random person's house while the motorcycles drove by on the road looking for us. I didn't know where the rest of my cousins were, especially the one who was bleeding badly. The house I jumped into was home to a huge dog who started barking at me and woke up the owners. At first, they assumed I was there to rob them, but once they actually got a good look at me, a 12-year-old boy in tears and clearly shaken, they asked me what happened. I explained everything, and I told them I had no idea where my brothers were. They lent me their phone, which I used to call the police, who in turn replied they could get a patrol car dispatched, but would take 2 hours. 2 goddamn hours. Unbelievable. I had all their numbers memorized, but I didn't want to call them. I was afraid they may have been hiding and didn't want to risk them getting caught due to a cell phone call. I thanked the kind people who offered to host me until the morning, but I had to get to my grandmother's place to find out if my cousins made it back. I snuck through the streets and finally got to my grandparents' house. 2 of my cousins made it back, but my brother was still out there. After some time, he called us and told us that he was hiding and would come back once the sun came out and the streets were more populated. Until dawn, the motorcycles kept passing by our house and we were afraid they followed one of us home. When dawn arrived, my brother finally returned and I was the only one uninjured. One of my cousins got stitches on his face, the other one had his ribs broken, and my brother had a hairline fracture on his arm. We all ran through the night, and suddenly, all the strict imposition by our parents made sense to us. My brother told us he called the cops too, but no one ever showed up. There was no support from anyone, and I can't even imagine what would have happened if my female cousin was with us. I also don't want to think what would have happened if they caught up with one of us before making it to our grandparents' house. Needless to say, we never went out anywhere late at night for a long time. To the people who ambushed us and beat us up for fun, let's not meet again.